Okay, we are so excited to have Dr. Owais Durrani here with us today. He's been a new friend who we met kind of randomly through various engagements, but seemingly after meeting him, he pops up everywhere. And so Reza and I are really excited to talk to you, Owais, today. And maybe we should start with just, tell us who you are and kind of what you're doing these days.
Yeah, excited to join you all. Always good to see you. I do a whole bunch of random things is how I explain it to my friends. I, still practice part-time emergency medicine, but then along with that, I would kind of break my life down into a few buckets. One is I do a whole bunch of stuff around something called Texas Tasty. And so it's basically this like food Instagram page that I started around the beginning of med school, end of college. And it started as like a fun kind of stress relief thing to like go to like various restaurants and document that and put that online. I guess there's a market for that. And so I started to gain traction, get some followers. And I still remember like the first time, this is like over a decade ago now, around a decade ago, where a restaurant was like, hey, you want to come and post about our food and we'll give you a free meal. And back when you're in like med school, a free meal is like everything, right? And so I was like, oh, wow, there's like some value exchange here. Like people see this as valuable. And so that's kind of grown now to what I like to say is pop culture, sports, and food. We have like a website, a podcast, still have the social media channels. And so I'm pretty involved with that. And obviously that gets monetized through advertising revenue and whatnot. The other kind of part of my life is kind of more media stuff. And so I would say during the pandemic, there was obviously a big need for talking about like basic things, right? Like how long you should wash your hands for, and like just really, really basic, like what are viruses, that kind of thing. And I got involved with some like local news in San Antonio where I was doing my residency program at that time. And that kind of snowballed into more and more media appearances. And so now I'm kind of like on the list for like various networks like, CBS, ABC. And if there's like, a measles outbreak, they might reach out and be like, hey, there's like a bunch of measles in Texas. We have some questions about that. Do you want to talk about that? And so I do that from time to time. And then that kind of led to me wanting to create more long form video content. And so I have this show on local Houston TV with NBC called STEM City. And so it's basically a monthly show where I go to these various environments and talk to STEM professionals that are usually non-medical about things that are doing that would be cool or fun for young people. And so we did like an episode with Southwest Airlines, NASA, the Blue Angels, and finding STEM those organizations, connecting those to STEM careers, and hopefully young people are like, oh, I maybe don't have to be, a practicing doctor. I could work for, the NFL team, or I could work for the Blue Angels, that kind of thing. So that's a whole bunch of random stuff. I'll stop there and I'm sure we'll get into more details.
That's fantastic. First of all, congrats for all the stuff that you've done. You're not that old compared to some of our oldies, and you've done a lot of amazing things. You mentioned the kids, so let's go back to, I don't know, childhood, high school, college, right? Like when you decided you wanted to go into medicine, like what took you there? And then we're going to say all the non-medical, like trying to get the story of like how it all began. But like your drive to go into medicine, like why, how, tell some of our listeners.
Yeah, so I think all the things I do today are driven by curiosity. And so that tracks all the way back to when I was a kid as well. I'm just curious about everything. And I think most things like, even something as complex as a rocket, like if you study it for long enough, you understand like 99% of it, right? But the human body, there's so much we don't know about. And so my answer isn't like, oh, helping everyone. It honestly was curiosity, the curiosity about what we know and learning those things, but then so much that we don't know, and knowing that, even if I am in medicine for 50 years, there's going to be a learning path and that curiosity and answering questions. And so that was what initially drew me to, the sciences and medicine. But then I am a curious person. And so I'm someone who I can't focus on one thing and that be like the only thing for the rest of my life, much like you guys, right? And so when I was in college, I was majoring in biology, and then I realized I would graduate in like 3 years because of like AP credits and whatnot. And I was like, well, rather than graduating in 3 years, let me do 4. And I'd always been curious about political science. And so I double majored in political science. And so that gave me kind of like, obviously, an understanding of policy. And one other thing I do a whole bunch of is like with various, even medical organizations, do advocacy residency and go to like the Hill in Texas or DC and advocate for like these various issues like Medicare cuts and whatever the case may be. And so using that kind of degree and knowledge, and that taught me a bunch of communication skills as well. And then kind of scratching these other itches as I went through med school and then residency and then post-residency as well. And so kind of allowing myself to, I guess you would say, scratch that itch of curiosity along the way and not squashing anything.
So like in med school and residency, how'd you balance this need to stay focused and get decent grades and USMLEs and all the stuff that we've all done with, hey, there's a little shiny thing over here that I really love to touch and feel and learn more about?
Yeah, so obviously it was hard, and especially during residency, right? When you're working all those hours. So for me, it was my stress relief. And so to others, when I talk about like, hey, I replied to a bunch of emails and set up like these like food visits and whatever the case may be, or set up these podcast tapings and dedicated time to it, sounds like work. But for me, it doesn't sound like work. And so it would be like the one day off a week I had, and it would be like 12 hours in front of a computer doing those things and following up and setting up, the business and how do you set up an LLC and whatever the case may be. And so for me, it never felt like work. It felt like excitement and curiosity and me kind of furthering this other kind of passion and curiosity I had. And I think that's kind of the key thing for me. Whenever there is something that, something may seem shiny on paper and someone may be like, hey, do you want to sign up for like this committee or this thing? And it may look good, but I realize that if I'm not passionate about it, I'm going to drop the ball. I'm going to make that person disappointed, and it's not going to benefit anyone. And so for me, as long as it's something that I'm curious about and I want to learn about, then it doesn't seem like work. And I think that's the key to balancing it during med school, residency, and then as an attending as well. So yeah.
Owais, do you remember like what was the very first thing you did in that Texas Tasty, that whole path? What was it? And like, do you remember what the spark was, and what were you thinking you could turn into at that time?
Yeah, so the first thing was in college at UT Austin. This was like 2013. And I was actually running for a student government position. And I was like, okay, how do I get my name out there? And it was like social media. So let me create like a Facebook page for my campaign. Let me create an Instagram page, all those things. And then obviously it's like, okay, what do I fill this page up with other than like, hey, vote for me because I'm like standing for this and this policy. It was like, hey, let me post about free events around campus. I was like, hey, there's free pizza around this club here. And by the way, vote for me. And that was like that initial traction of getting followers. And then that campaign came and went. I lost, unfortunately. But I had this page with like a few thousand followers. And I was like, oh, wow, I could still, I guess, post here. The page still exists. And so changed the name around and kind of continued to post about like free stuff around campus, outside of campus and whatnot. And that's where that initial like, oh, there's some value exchange here. And I mean, who doesn't want followers and likes and whatnot? We're all kind of, fed off of that. And so that was that initial thing that then accidentally led to what it is today.
I just love this story for so many reasons, and because I think there's so many like important themes in there. One is that you just ran for office and it didn't work out, and so short term it feels like a loss of some sort, right? But in reality, it opened up some new opportunities that just kind of, accidentally in one way or another, like happened over a long period of time to work out for you, right? And I think it's such an important point to, a lot of folks, they think like, oh, I've been like, I'm unlucky. Owais was very lucky. Well, you can increase the surface area for luck by putting yourself out there, trying things, building things. And they may not, and they probably won't work out the way that you hope, but by increasing the surface area, that there's more opportunity for certain things to then work out work out in a positive way, right?
Yeah, the other theme that I was reflecting on is to drive value for free initially, right? So a lot of things that we do, especially docs who are now in the professional space making a reasonable living, if someone asks them to do something, they're like, well, what's the opportunity cost of my time and this and that, and how do I monetize this? But to figure out a way to drive value for free, even if it's just information sharing, and then the other side feels like, oh, this is nice, I'm getting something here, and eventually I'm willing to give something, in, whether it's Texas Tasty or a lot of other things. So tell me about the first time you were on TV.
Yeah, I was very, very nervous. And so basically we have the pandemic happening. There's a lockdown. Well, let me rewind a bit. I think this is kind of an interesting story. It's a fun story. So I was in residency, second year of emergency medicine. I went to a emergency medicine conference along with like 3 other co-residents in New York City. This was like end of February 2020. We come back, I'm working on a shift the next day, and literally midway through my shift, I literally remember this, turning to my co-resident being like, it's kind of cold today. I put on my jacket. By the end of the shift, I had like rigors. I was sweating. I was like, whatever. I get home, check my temperature. It's like 104. I call my program director. He's like, yeah, unfortunately, I got the same call from your other residents that went on this trip. So we were like the first 4 cases of COVID in San Antonio. We were on the news, like our names weren't put out there, but like they were like, oh yeah, 4 residents from UT Health San Antonio, that kind of thing. Anyway, so because we were healthcare workers, we were under like a longer quarantine than like those 2 weeks. They're like, okay, 3 weeks until your cough's gone, all that kind of stuff. And so during this time, like after the first week, after I got over my symptoms and whatnot, I got super bored. So I got on Twitter and I started posting like public health stuff because I was stir crazy and bored and whatnot. And it got picked up by like some local news, and they're like, hey, do you want to come on and talk about this on air? And so I'd literally never been on TV in that capacity. And so I did it. It was from home. I literally was like sweating profusely before, like trying to compose myself. It turned out to be like okay looking on the final product. But yeah, that was my first experience. The funny thing is that I probably did that for like 3 or 4 more months. At a point, I was doing like 4 or 5 hits on various national and local stations. And then I still remember working an overnight shift, and I came home, went to sleep, and woke up like around noon or 1. And there was like literally so many text messages, emails, messages from my PD saying like, hey, you never like asked for permission for this. And I'm like, oh God, I got kicked out of residency, trying to return one of those calls. Obviously I didn't get kicked out of residency. And but that was another one of those situations where, I knew that if I like went to them with this, they would probably be like, no, you're a resident, we're not going to let you do this. And it was like, just do it and ask for forgiveness later. And thankfully it worked out then. But yeah, that was kind of my first foray into that space.
I love it. I love it. So tell me about like what you do now on TV. Like I've seen you on CNN and so on. You're less the guy who experienced it versus now you're an expert who's being asked for his opinion and so on. How long did it take to get better at the tactical pieces of being on air, being concise, crafting your art that now, a lot of networks value?
Yeah, I would say like probably at least a solid 1.5 to 2 years before I was like honestly comfortable going into something. There was a point where, even like once we moved past COVID, like with COVID, obviously you do it enough where you kind of know the things that you're going to talk about. Well, once you move past it, and there's all these other, topics about child formula, measles, other viruses, TB. You have to obviously learn the skill of condensing a whole bunch of information into something that's understandable, something that's obviously medically accurate. And then the third point is they don't give you these questions. And so they may be like, hey, there's this outbreak or there's this new medication approved. Can you come talk about it? And you say yes. And finding ways that, hey, they probably will ask you a question you don't know the exact answer to, but saying something that's both accurate, but also not medically misleading. And so, yeah, it took a while. Now I would say I'm fairly comfortable at it. Like the last week, there was like Gene Hackman's wife died from like hantavirus. And so like, I remember that from med school, but I don't haven't thought about it since med school. And it was literally like, hey, can you come on in the next 45 minutes to talk about this? And so when went up and like looked up some of the quick things, I was like, oh yeah, now I do remember this. And so having that skill of, drawing on something that maybe isn't your specialty related, but that so you can talk about it better than, like a layperson, and then finding ways to kind of quickly get up to date on that stuff and then condense it into like a 3-minute use hit that you would do. So yeah, it's still something I would say I'm, learning and getting better at each time I do it, but definitely more comfortable than that first time.
Yeah, that's really important, right? Because they rather talk to you than the chief of infectious disease at the local place who's the expert of hantavirus, right? So people think, especially in the early in their career, that they need the title or the 20 years of experience to be the person who's in charge of something for their opinion to matter. But if you've worked on your skill, and it's taken a year and a half, and you're comfortable at taking some complicated ideas and packaging them into something that's digestible, um, you provide value, and they're looking for that, right? And there's a lot of other examples, I think, for our cohort and our listeners, that they need to think about the amount of investment of time for it to take off. Like people always talk about, you have that 10,000 hours of practicing the piano before you become comfortable. But in anything else, I mean, we've all spent 30 years training to become board certified docs, and then we expect that in 30 minutes, all of a sudden our non-clinical career is going to take off, and so on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
100% agree. And like, to your point, like, who's like the pinnacle of like medical correspondent? Sanjay Gupta, he's a neurosurgeon, but he talks about everything. He barely talks about brain surgery. And so I think that's a perfect example of that.
I had Sanjay's name written on my paper because I wanted to. I think you are on TV more than he is these days.
He's old. You're the new and improved Sanjay Gupta.
Yeah, you're the version 2.0. So Owais, I'm presuming most of these like TV appearances don't actually, like, they don't pay you for that, right? But I'm sure they've led to some kind of interesting opportunities, doors being open for you, or just like what have these TV gigs led to for you?
Let's clarify. Do any of them actually pay, or where are you in these things?
Yeah, no. So none of them pay unless you are like the kind of designated chief medical correspondent for like Sanjay Gupta or ABC or whatever the case. But everyone else that you see that does kind of like hits for various networks don't get paid. And so I soon realized that like maybe a year and a half, like initially it's really exciting, right? You're on the news, you get to share it with family and whatnot. But then at some point, a year and a half into it, you're like, okay, what is my long end-term goal with this? Obviously, everyone wants to be like the one chief medical correspondent for the networks, but that's like making it into the NBA or NFL, right? If that one person, when they get that, they're going to be there for 20, 30 years. So that's probably not going to happen for most people. And so for me, it was two things. One, I really enjoyed doing that, but I also realized that I enjoyed speaking, and through that, I learned that. And so I knew that speaking is a thing that people do that they get paid for. And so I asked myself, how do I kind of get to that point? And obviously, like you said, the first speaking thing you do is not going to be paid. And so actually where I met y'all at Health Europe, right? I started applying to various conferences to speak. And so that was like Texas College of Emergency Medicine physicians. That was American Osteopathic Association. That was going to Health Europe and, speaking and paying for my plane ticket, that kind of thing. And so A, getting experience, and then B, filming some of those things and then sharing that experience online so people see you as someone who speaks about, various topics. For me, those topics are, two or three things. One, like, media and social media in medicine. There's a few other topics I'm really passionate about. Technology is a big part, especially with like AI and everything. I'm like on the AI committee at my hospital. I get to see a lot of these products early on and then speaking about those things. And so now I actually have been signed by Speakers Bureau, APB, and have had a few paid speaking gigs, going to a few more this year as well. And so I'm starting to see the fruits of like all that media work I did. And when you go to these conferences, they're very impressed with like, hey, you're on CNN or ABC. And so they really like emphasize that and, add it in your bio and their website and that kind of thing. And so I've used that as a way to kind of bolster this aspiring speaking career that I'm getting started on. And so that's been one thing. The other thing was, I did realize that I enjoyed kind of being in front of the camera, doing this media stuff. And so STEM City and that's how I kind of leverage myself into STEM City, kind of reaching out to these local stations, being like, hey, I have this media experience in front of the camera. I want to kind of translate this to something different where it involves inspiring the next generation of kids wanting to maybe go into STEM or maybe put it on their radar. And that 100% opened those doors. Because if I had like zero experience and had never done anything in front of a camera, they'd be like, hey, why should we trust you? We have a million other people we could go to. And so, yeah, finding ways like you kind of mentioned that maybe they don't pay or they are just kind of resume boosters, and then translating those into things that, maybe you could monetize down the line.
And
I
some of
just
these
love
things
this
were
story.
not like little things, right? You went into the plane with the Blue Angels. I remember seeing a video of that. So it's not just coming on and talking about measles. You're getting to do cool things and experience amazing places and so on. So if someone's just getting started, so let's say you have one of our colleagues either in internal medicine or emergency medicine, they're in their 40s or 50s and they're really good at the clinical piece. What would you give them in terms of advice to just get started, get a little bit of something going?
Yeah, so in my opinion, I would say social media is key to anything you want to do, whether that's going to traditional media, whether that's speaking at conferences, whether that's educating residents, and you want to be like, we obviously all know like medical influencers like Crit and all those guys who are like really, really specialized and have huge followings and they have their own medical conferences. And I think social media is the gateway to that. And social media also helps you learn how to communicate. And so for me personally, when I create like Instagram Reels 1 minute on various medical topics, these 45-second to 1 minute clips, and that helps me then with like my main kind of when I go on the news, because I'm using like those 45 seconds to get like a medical point across in a concise way that is hopefully useful to the audience. And so I can't tell you how many times I record those. I'll do like 5, 6, 7 takes, and I'll hate this one word I say one way or another, and it's teaching me. But social media is also, it allows you to reach your audience. And I feel like, as someone who does a lot of social media, both for like the Texas safety stuff and now kind of more in the medical space as well, the algorithms are so good that you find your audience. And so you even creating a video about, getting, a health check for a colonoscopy, the AI and algorithms are so good, it'll like say colonoscopy. And then if someone was searching for colonoscopy, it'll get your video in front of them for on their like Me Too page or whatever the case is on whatever platform. And so the I think social media is a start, and maybe writing's a big thing for you. And so you could create a Substack. And so it doesn't have to be video, right? It could be Substack, it could be Twitter, it could be LinkedIn, and you kind of creating more thought leadership there. But finding whatever social media platform you feel more comfortable with, and then whatever you're passionate with, and connecting that and creating content. And I feel like that will teach you so much. And it'll teach you so much, but B, it'll connect you to the people you want to get connected to, whether it's a PI that you want to work with, or whether it's residents you want to teach, or a news network you want to be in front of, whatever the case may be.
What I love about your story is you planted the seeds many years ago, and then through curiosity just went deeper, and then one thing led to another, led to another, led to another, right? And I love that. I think it's such a key element that people need to understand. You just need to get started. Let your curiosity drive you. It might not be obvious at all today how this thing plays out for you, right? But if you're curious and you actually care and you're creating things that something of value for others, almost always it will lead to something good.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And those seeds, it goes back to watering them, right? Like you got to keep working at it. So give me an example of some seed that was planted that eventually wilted and died, right? Like something that didn't get to like all the way. It was just an early curiosity, and then, it was just what it was, and you're not doing it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I thought initially, maybe it was like, being kind of enamored by the credentials and whatnot. It was like, hey, I want to, so I work at like a large hospital system in Houston, but at one of the community sites. And I was like, oh, I want to work at the main site where it's like the large academic center and join a few committees. And this will kind of like bolster, my name and credentials, and it'll kind of help open some doors. I wanted to kind of, get into more kind of leadership in these large hospitals and whatnot. And I soon realized, like, I got on a few committees. I started picking up a few shifts at kind of the larger hospital site. And I soon realized I was doing it for the wrong reasons, right? Like I wasn't passionate about teaching residents. I wasn't passionate about going to these various hospital committee meetings and whatnot. And I, was always mad when I had to do it. Traffic would tend to be bad going to that side. And I'd be like, why am I doing this? This is annoying. And I did that for like a year and a half. And I was like, no, I just kind of want to work at my community site. There's no need for that. And it kind of made me very frustrated, not a pleasant person to be around. But I realized that, kind of going back to what I said initially, I think if you're doing it, or if I was doing it for reasons that are not because of true curiosity and true passion, then it usually, maybe doesn't work out. And so I think for me, I've realized that. And so a lot of people, whether it's in the medical world or whether, it's in these other circles I'm in, they'll be like, why are you doing this? Your main thing is this, or the other group will say your main thing is that. It's like, I just like it, it's simple as that. And so, but yeah, and then there's been lots of mini failures along the way. There's probably failures every day, right? There's, this series I wanted to create with like Texas Tasty, where it was we like almost had this funding for it. It was going to be like this traveling through Texas kind of road trip series. And it was going to be like this podcast combined with like eating your way through like it was a chain of gas stations in Texas, and kind of going through their sites and like various Texas cities and whatnot. And it was going to be like this big, monetary, like 6-figure kind of deal. And it was going to be amazing. And it was going to showcase, Texas to World Cup visitors. And basically this gas station was going to be kind of like their go-to place for when they're going to World Cup games in Houston and Dallas and that kind of thing. And it fell through, end of last year. And it really, really sucked, right? It was like this monetarily, this kind of loss, and it was going to be this big thing for the brand, and then being associated in World Cup is really, really awesome. And I'm over it now, but like there's so many mini failures, and I think the thing you have to get used to and move on from.
That is amazing. So how big is Texas Tasty now?
Social media wise, on Instagram, we have over 600,000 followers. TikTok, we have around 80,000 or so. Our website gets about 110,000 unique visitors each month. So, podcast has about 10,000 listeners per month, per episode. And so it's growing, and yeah, it's fun. It's myself and 2 other employees that kind of help me run it. And so yeah, it's fun. And I selfishly go to like the fun things. So, it used to be like a one main show where I have to go to like restaurant reviews and everything. Now I don't do the restaurant reviews as much, but like if there's like a VIP Formula One experience, I got dibs on that. I'll be there for that.
That is amazing. So like, how do you monetize Texas Tasty? Is it through ads or something else?
Through ads, yeah. So it's basically restaurants and brands advertising on our social media channels, sponsoring the podcast, putting ads on our website, some sponsored reviews, things like that.
I think if through ClinX we do some sort of like on-site event in Texas, for sure we're going to involve you, and we can like basically eat our way through Texas.
Yes, we got you covered on the guides for wherever the event is.
Yeah. So where can people find you online? Your story is so amazing.
Yeah, so for me personally, all my social media is so my Instagram is Ace, nickname ACE, last name DURRANI, and then everywhere else is Owais Durrani. And then if they're interested in Texas Tasty, which are Texas Tasty on any the websites, the texastasty.com or any of the social media channels, and you'll find us.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, any last comments or any last thoughts, Reza, Owais?
No, I just want to thank you for your story. And, in this world of innovation ecosystem that we're a part of, linear growth is always has friction, whether you're at a conglomerate or health system and so on. So for someone to decide, I want to go this route or this route, and then actually execute on it, kudos, right? Like you don't have to be like a full professor. You don't have to be at the main hospital. You just need to have the desire and the persistence to do what you do. So, we really thank you for the time you have with us, and I'm sure our viewers are going to be excited to see it.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me share my story. And I love what you guys are doing and amplifying these kind of alternate paths.
Thanks, Owais.